I had the loose idea of creating like a resource to work on creative confidence in musicians, basically from my own lived experience as like a musician moving through like years of training. Like I did my undergraduate degree in classical music performance back in New Zealand. Got a couple New Zealanders here today. We might be 50-50. Yes, New Zealand. You hear the accent start slipping as soon as I say it. I spent a long time in classical music environments, training to be an orchestral musician, and I found the focus on perfectionism to be all-consuming, and I developed really bad performance anxiety to the point towards the end of my undergraduate degree, I developed like a injury on the soft palate, which y'all won't want to know about because it's kind of gross, but it's the bit at the back of your tongue that sort of stops like air and stuff from, it's really important when you play a woodwind instrument that it closes properly, but if you have crippling anxiety, it doesn't, and it means you can't really play properly. And at the time, I went to like an ear, nose, throat specialist, and they were like, you need to get Botox injections on the back of your throat, and I was like, or take anti-anxiety medication, and I was like, that's both pretty intense. And I had thought about it for a long time, but what actually helped the most was learning how to improvise and working with scores that were more open to creative interpretation than more like standard repertoire, which has like a lot of baggage attached to it. And so it was really like moving to the new school and taking a lot of courses like Jane Ira Bloom's class and Rebecca Keller's class, which was all about improvisation, cross-genre, cross-discipline work. There was like a lot of these courses where it was like, there was nothing you could do that was wrong. You couldn't make a mistake and you couldn't embarrass yourself. And that was sort of where I found like freedom and I found confidence. And I think when you train in music, so much of your resourcing is around books. Like a lot of people don't think about that because obviously it's an art form that involves your ears. But when you don't have a music teacher with you 24/7, you're often relying on printed materials as like part of your education. So that was kind of why I like pivoted towards making like printed materials that would work on this sort of experience I was having in like a workshop and live setting. It's like, how can I take the lessons that I'm getting from this really incredible education that very few people get to access because it's in New York and it's very expensive. How can I create this into a resource that can go home with people? Yeah.
That's that.
That's wonderful. I love everything you just said about that. Having read the book, it centers a lot on centering confidence in musicians, but also cultivating joy in a music making process. Can you talk a little bit about what maybe inspired you to really put joy at the forefront of the book? You'll see I'm setting Leah up here. But also what, having, looking back on the process of like making this book and writing the prompts, how did you experience joy in the process of making the book? Because it's something you talk so much about in the book of wanting the musicians, or really, we will talk about this a little later too, any artist who picks up the book from any practice to find the joy within their process. So can you talk a little bit about your inspiration, what you felt about this process?
So this is obviously me and Joe are obsessed with each other. We're colleagues and we're peers in Mame, but we're also very, very good friends. And I'm not saying this just to be like, performative or staged, but Joe is a huge part of my journey, and like labeling joy is like a really important value in my practice and like something that the book is orientated around. Joe works in theater. He works in theater education, more specifically. He has a nonprofit in Fort Worth, Texas, that's all about providing tuition-free arts education for high schoolers. And one of the first classes I had with Joe, after like sort of my social anxiety about like being in America had died down, I could actually like pay attention to who was in my class other than just like having an inner monologue going, going, oh my god, they're not going to understand a word I say. I don't know. So actually listening to what my peers were talking about, one of the very, very first things that Joe said was he stated joy as his most important value in his practice as a teacher and a theatre maker. And I don't know, it was like a huge light bulb moment. Sometimes, you know, I think it's a universal experience. Like you're often trying to put your ideas into words and someone else just says it in a way you would have never come up with. And it was just that was the thing I think I'd been searching for when I was moving through classical school, and I felt a lot of friction with like the projected career. And I moved to New York being like, I need to find my sound, but I was finding it like, there was like that tension there. And when you said centering joy, that was sort of like the light bulb moment as this is the pathway to people accessing that like greater confidence. It's through centering joy. But yeah, I guess easier said than done. I think, I don't know about you guys, but often like when people are talking about the importance of soft skills, I find it quite annoying and like grating, because I think it can be kind of pandering and not super, I don't know, it doesn't recognize the strength that it takes to have some of those skills. And I think people who are like seen as quite joyful or bubbly or like confident sometimes aren't like taken so seriously, and it's like not necessarily something that is seen as a pathway to making good art, because it is maybe has a softer edge than like words like discipline and rigor and things like that. But yeah, in terms of like having joy as part of the process in making the book, there were big chunks of like this process where I was not experiencing that much joy. And full transparency, cone of trust, because we're amongst friends here. But it was mainly because, I mean, you know, I'm never going to be so naive. I'm never going to be that person where it has to be like sunshine and roses all the time. That's not what centering joy is about. It's about, you know, picking yourself up and finding the lighter moments when it feels really challenging to do the work, or like work with a particular person, or like collaborate in a particular environment. It's like the joy is absent, but you're still trying to choose it. That's kind of what I'm getting at, is like it's the pursuit of it, even if it's not readily available all the time. So yeah, there were huge chunks of writing this book where I was really struggling with things, and part of that was like, you know, homesickness, having no money, and like experiencing like a lot of financial stress, and like I had lots of like family health stuff, and it was things that weren't even about the creative practice, but all of that stuff ties into it because no one's a monolith. Am I just rambling at this point?
No.
It is such a huge part. I mean, one of my favorite spreads that Jennifer Blaine designed, our beautiful designer. Yes, one of the main spreads in the book says to center joy is, oh my gosh, am I going to butcher what I've written in my own book? To center joy is a radical creative act. Thank you, Joe. And I do, that is sort of, yeah, what everything hinges on. Yeah. Thanks for that great question, Joe.
It was a long answer.
Oh, that was fantastic. Well, you know, part of it too is, like you were saying, people who bring joy into their work and have like more of a joyful disposition, sometimes it is hard to be taken seriously. But what I love about that spread in the book as well is it's actually a very radical thing. And it's a hard thing because it takes constant reminder. And for me, it all goes back to how I felt as a child experiencing theater, and how when I started to pursue it as a profession, it was like, wait, why am I like 8 years old and these people are like screaming at me and people are stressed out? Like, this is something that's beautiful and I love it. Like, why is it like this? So when I work with students in education, it's like, if we're leaving at the end of the day and we're like crying and we're like drained and we're like not having a good time, what are we doing here? For real. If joy doesn't exist, what is the point? So I love that you bring that theme into that book, and it's such a central theme. And I also love that you hold space to say, yeah, it's not always.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's not a put on thing. You know, it's like you were saying, yeah, it is a practice. Absolutely. Yeah, so can you talk about any jumping off from your thread of challenges, what were the challenges that you had to work through when you were coming up for the idea of this book, as you were pitching the idea of this book, or just anything? Like, what obstacles did you kind of have to navigate to come to this final beautiful product that is, just from the cover, again, by Jennifer Blaine, is so joyful and beautiful, but it also takes hard work. So do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, like particular challenges. Well, I guess the first one was I don't have a background in writing beyond law school, which not a joyful place. You can attest to that. It's so I guess like the biggest challenge at the beginning was and this is something that everyone who is in the creative field has to do with their particular practice, is sort of naming yourself as the person who's going to do it. And like, imposter syndrome, I fear, is used too much these days, but it's that whole sense of being like, am I the person to actually produce this? Because I've never done this before, and like taking that step of being like, well, you have to start somewhere, and like, it's such a personal lived experience that and I did have the support to do it. I was really fortunate that this is the first time in an educational institution that I've had women as like creative mentors. That's not like a slight against the industry we have in Aotearoa. Like I'm very proud to be from there, and I'm like super loyal. Like all the music we were listening to before is from like home. But in a sense, like we're still a colony, and we're still so far away that a lot of the resourcing we have like reflects systems that were set up a long time ago. And so I didn't actually have access to mentors who felt relatable, and it was coming to the new school and starting to take courses with women who I like felt had similar backgrounds or similar like values or similar career trajectories that I could aspire to. That was sort of like the push to overcome that first challenge of being like, should I even do this in the first place? And then the next challenge sort of took place over the last semester, which was figuring out how to structure it and what was going to go in it. And I spent a long time researching, I kind of call them like self-help books for creatives, and they're really like popular at the moment, like The Artist's Way, anything by Kenny Werner. There's a book by Victor E. Wooten that's really great as well called The Music Lesson. But they're all super narrative based, and they're not very like implementable. Like they don't have like, The Artist's Way has the morning pages and like journaling things, but for musicians, like our practice is playing music, not well, in this case, I guess it is writing vol, but that was unexpected. But it's like these books, you could read them, but it was still like you were passively taking on these lessons. So I guess the second challenge was how to make something that's still like in a fixed medium that feels like practical. And that challenge, I feel like I only got over it when I started working with other people, like instead of just trying to do it in a solitary way, like having workshops with people on the material that I was writing and seeing how it worked in like a live room, and working with Jen and like having someone else sort of like interact with it made it feel like it would work, I guess. Yeah. I have no idea how to like end my answers, and I'm just gonna put that into the space. I kind of just like end a thought and I'm like, and back to you, Joe. Like we're on the news.
Or just like we're on FaceTime.
Yeah, we're on
FaceTime. Which happens about 5 times a day. So the book is my segue. So the book is largely a series of like writing prompts for musicians to help center creative confidence and joy in them and in their practice, and then it sort of evolves into places where they can draw their own unconventional scores in the book, which we're about to do a little bit of live for all of you. But before we do that, can you talk maybe about one of your favorite prompts off the top of your head for the writing, and what you want musicians or any artist who picks up the book to gain from these prompts?
Yeah, so the book is in like 3 sort of chapters, and the first 2 chapters are like prompt based. So the first one is love, oh my gosh, I feel so like nervous naming things that in the book, like I'm gonna say it wrong, but I have to keep reminding myself that I made it, so I know what's in it. But yeah, the first chapter is love, and it was heavily inspired by the artist's way, but I tried to make the prompts in a way that helped you reflect more about sound and your relationship to your inner critic and the relationship you have to like the sound in its environment. I think my favorite prompt in that chapter, and as you were saying it, this memory popped in of telling Liz when we were in Utica Ave train station. It was January, I don't know, but it was the first, talking to Liz about the prompts that I started like reading some of the ones we had, like I had written while we were waiting for a train, because I realized I hadn't shared anything that I was writing in the book with another person yet, which felt like really scary. And Liz is obviously like the most kind, safe person to share any. If you have original work, share it with Liz, she'll give you a confidence boost. But I told Liz that one of the prompts was about imagining your life as if it's a garden, and like what kind of plants you would be planting in your garden, and like what would they represent, and like what would the part of the garden be that's like your creative practice. And I found free writing super helpful in terms of like helping me name goals and like naming what I actually want for myself, which is something we talk about a lot in our courses, is like actually naming exactly what you want and naming your values and being really specific about it. I found free writing like the most helpful way to sort of, it's the way I realized that I actually want to be a composer and I want to write original music. That was something that was never on the cards because I was just supposed to play clarinet at second desk in an orchestra. I wasn't supposed to write for myself. But I think that was my favorite prompt, just because it had such a visceral memory of telling Liz and getting, just such like a wonderful response. And I think from the deep listening portion of the book, that's all come out of research I've done on John Cage and Pauline Oliveros, who are two really incredible artists that you guys should check out. They have both passed away, but they are our ancestors in the field of like reimagining what music education could be like. Just like understanding that you can be objective about like sound, and that you don't have to jump to labeling something as good or bad, goes a really long way to just having a more open mind to what you're interacting with and what you're making. It means like you're not setting up all music to like be on a hierarchy of value where like some music is more valuable than others. And also it just like teaches you to be kind to yourself, because like how many of us when we've picked up an instrument and played one note and be like, oh, before it like then the sounds even died, you're like, that was awful. Instead of just like thinking about how it might have just been different from how you were anticipating, and like, the kindness that comes with being objective. That's kind of what was my favorite realization out of that part of the book. What was the other thing that you asked me about?
You answered it.
Yeah.
You want that for other musicians.
Yeah.
You had it yourself.
Yeah, I guess it's like, I don't know, when I wrote the book, maybe this is going to sound like that scene from Mean Girls where she's like up there crying and she's like, I want us all to get along, and it's like, she doesn't even go here. That's like kind of how I feel about writing this book. It's like, I just want everyone to just have a kinder relationship with themselves when they're making things. And it sounds like kind of naive, but I guess it's like, I just learned this through like, actually like practical and like kind of like weird, like academic ways. But I think that the lessons are like so universal and like simple that putting them in like a joyful, accessible read, well, like that's kind of what I wanted to, people to take away from it, is that like it can, like being kinder to yourself is not going to make you fail an audition or like work less hard or do all of those things that like all of the mean voices in your head will tell you when you just want to step back and take a break and not be so critical in that kind of way. But
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So in the book, there are two types of unconventional scores that you've kind of created that you walk the reader through actually drawing and making. And the two types are the Kiki Booba and then the line works.
Yes.
So, let's get our glasses
Yeah,
off.
oh gosh. Okay,
And
this
let's
is
get
gonna be
this
fun. You know I
popped
love
off.
arts and crafts.
Yeah. So, you're just gonna draw one right now, right?
Well, I thought like if we've got some
whatever you
paper and pens
Right
over
here for everyone.
So
yes.
if you guys want to grab one, you can also scribble me one, and that would be really wonderful. It's like a little takeaway from this event.
And you're gonna walk us through
Yeah.
what we need to do in order to do that. Yeah.
I mean, okay, yeah.
I'll hold it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'll give it back.
Yeah. So yeah, just a little context. So Kiki and Booba is a sound. It's like a term used in educational psychology to explain how people connect sounds with text and like and shape. So it's like Kiki and Booba are imaginary words, and what they like often did in studies is they told people like they give them a spiky shape and they give them a squidgy one, and they'd be like, which one's Kiki and which one's Booba, and people would so often associate the same, and that all of that. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. That all came from work that my friend Hayden Nicol does. He's a violinist back in New Zealand. He's getting his master's in educational psychology, and he runs a non-profit teaching kids string instruments. And yeah, he was just telling me about it just when we were like having a phone catch-up, and I thought it would be a really cool concept for inspiring sort of, I like to say fast game's a good game, you know, like short little improvisations where you're like not thinking about if it's an ugly sound or a pretty sound or anything like that. So, and then line works is more about like learning how to like follow the gesture and learning how to like coordinate a sound together when you don't have bar lines or like a conductor or someone being like, "Hey." And so like, what does it mean to actually like communicate with someone when what you've got is like a line that you're following, and the kind of conversations that you need to have to understand like what the line represents. Like, is it pitch? Is it speed? Is it texture? Is it color? So I thought we could draw some graphic scores together because everyone's a composer. You know, we're not gatekeeping it. So we're all just gonna do this together. There is really like no rules. And there's some in the book if you want some inspiration. But do you want to hold this again?
I'll hold this.
Okay. So yeah, should I do a line work one or a Kiki and Booba one?
What are you feeling?
I'm feeling like a line one.
Let's do a line work.
So I really like using the line scores for myself when I'm trying to figure out how I want to like represent a gesture, like a direction. And I'm so sorry. Sorry for the people at home. But it's like often when you see it like this. Oh my god! Oh, thank you, darling. Theatre production in action. Often when I'm like usually doing it this way, and the tendency is you go like, and that can like represent like pitch this way, but you can make up the rules in your own little universe. But we might do it this way, Joe? So maybe I think this feels so crazy. I feel like Bob Ross. Do you guys know Bob Ross? It's like. Wow. And it's like, how does that represent a score? And it's like, but you could also like add dimension to it by like coloring certain sections in, or like creating texture. I don't know. Whee! Or things like that. Or you could even create a second line in a different color maybe to make it less confusing. And that could be like your duo partner. And then you have a conversation about like what, or you don't, and you just go for it. And see what happens. Could have put a timer on for 5 minutes and then see what happens at the end of it. But yeah, if you guys want to just have a go, scores don't have to be dots on 5 lines like they teach you at school. That's just Western supremacy kind of in action. So if you want to just have a go, so I'm not just sat here by myself. Yeah, just have a little draw, see. And like you can talk to your neighbors about like what you think a line could represent in terms of the sound you'd make. Yeah.
I just have one more question to sort of
yes.
close us out.
Okay.
And I definitely did not come up with this. And I can't remember. We were at a talk for Yes.
Heartwood, the book.
No,
Different one.
It was that composer that we saw together.
Jessie Montgomery.
Jess Montgomery. She was in conversation with someone. And they were talking about her work that she had just composed. And I really liked this question as an ender, so I'm going to ask it to you now. So do you feel like this book is a departure, an arrival, or something else for you?
Oh my gosh.
That's such a great question. I fear that's going to be making it into some of the NAMI syllabuses now. Thanks, Jessie. A departure, an arrival, or something else? I think it feels like an arrival that's like a launch pad into the next phase. Like I do really feel like this is the start. Because we're bringing cultures together, cultural exchange. Yeah, I do feel like, oh, my mom's gonna be so embarrassed watching that bit back. She's like, I just think that I never would have conceived of myself as someone who would have made something like this if I hadn't come to this city 2 years ago and had the experiences I did. And I never really felt like I had that much agency in the industry I was in, despite being an organizer and a producer of events. I never felt like I could produce something that was my own. I got really comfortable producing, other people's original work, and I'm such an advocate of new work, but it felt kind of inconceivable that I would make something for myself. And obviously this is for everyone to use. I wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for the community. But it's I don't know, to have something that has my name on it is something that's kind of come from my brain and Jennifer's brain. It's I don't know, I feel really, really proud of it. But it feels like this is only a baby step into making original work. So it feels like an arrival, and that it's given context to a lot of the kind of more grim experiences I had, as a woman in the arts and just in my training, all of the experiences that could have really made me a lawyer, God forbid. Could have really easily have put me on a different track, and to still have got to this point where I have something that is mine, and I can be really proud of, and is joyful despite it all. So it's an arrival, but it's also a first step. That's
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
From an outsider perspective, it feels like a beautiful arrival, and the way that you've even just spoken about it in this last half hour or so is genuinely deeply inspiring. I was so inspired going through the book. You should be incredibly proud of yourself.
Yeah.
Look at all these unconventional scores you've all written. So one more applause for Jennifer Blaine, who did the design and illustrations of the book. And then, of course, for Miss Leah Jane, bravo. Meditations for musicians on sale at the counter. Do you want to close this out?
Yeah, I should.
Definitely, before we all go get a slice of cake and a glass of wine, there are obviously a few thank yous that I need to say before we wrap up. Obviously, the first thank you goes to Jen. Genuinely for keeping me alive and well and sane and healthy. Me and Jen live together, and I have codependency on her as well. She really is one of my, the best friends I've ever made, and I'm so grateful for you as a human being, and also for sharing your time and your artistry, because it's when I opened the box, I was oh my gosh, these are real books. They actually look incredible. I could never have imagined when I first pitched this project for my course. I never could have imagined that it would look or feel as real as this, and that's all thanks to Jen. I also need to thank my professors and the opportunities I've had at the new school, and Fulbright for funding it, and my community back home in Aotearoa, which Joe, honestly, you're representing them here today. Joe, she's a pillar of the local Wellington music community, so I'm so honored that you're here with us. Thank you, Jazzy Joe. Yes, keep them updated. Yeah, like obviously, like my community back home have informed all of this work, even though I haven't seen them for almost 2 years. So they are obviously, you know, they're at the very heart of this project too. Thanks to Liz for last minute editing the book. We had a really crazy midnight session in our living room where Liz got out the red pen and was like, oh, better check the grammar in this. Thank you, Liz. A huge thank you to my family, of course, for setting me on this path in the first place by signing me up to music lessons and supporting me with every idea and project I've had so far. And huge thank you to Danielle and Lily and Liz's Book Bar. This is an author-owned bookstore. Yeah, this is an author-owned bookstore. The owner, Maura, has actually a book on sale that you can purchase. So it would mean a lot to support an institution like this. We need to support independent bookstores. And you're already doing that by being here. So yeah, feel free to grab a drink and Maura's book, and mine if you feel like it. And lastly, obviously, Joe, for keeping me calm and keeping me on track and not letting me give up when I really felt like it wasn't worth finishing this project anymore, and being an incredible friend. I literally couldn't have asked for a better friend. Thank you so much, and thank you for hosting this. It's been so much fun. I've had so much fun. Yes.